Hey guys, it's Lindsay. Just going to give you a quick tour of the Legacy Branding Gifts order form. It's pretty self-explanatory, like a lot of order forms are, but I'm going to draw your attention to a couple things that either could be A, potentially confusing, or B, that you should take a special note of. There are things on the order form that go into Vector Connect, which is Cutco or one of the other websites of the companies that we order from. And there are things on the order form that go in Vast Action, which is our database keeping track of customers after they order. And it'll become pretty clear which things go in which database, but I'll do some pointing out of that for you. So the first thing I'm going to start with is what type of order it is. So you need to know whether it's a Cutco order, and underneath Cutco, whether it's a closing gift order or somebody's just buying knives for their house, and you need to know whether it's a non-Cutco order, like a bottle, a cutting board, or a wine box. So that's all listed right here. Cutco, we just say Cutco if it's a closing gift order, because that's our most common Cutco order from me. Over here is residential. That's also Cutco, but we just put residential to make it fit in this tiny space here. Residential is knives for their residents. Okay, so the two on the end are Cutco. This one's closing gifts. This one's residential. They're both Cutco, but only the closing gift says the word Cutco. So I thought I'd explain that. In the middle are the non-Cutco items. Vinsulators are the bottles, the insulated bottles that are kind of like Yetis but sexier. The cutting boards, we have about 6 different kinds, and we mostly get them from a company called Wilmy. And then the cheese wine box is a wine box with a lid on the top that can also be used as a cheese board or a cutting board, so it's a little more permanent. So the ones in the middle are the non-Cutco, this is the closing gifts, this is residential. Very important to make a distinction between the residential and the closing gifts because they have different pricing, different requirements. Different pricing is the most important thing, so Cutco will want you to have them entered in differently. Date is the date that I took the order from the agent and got the credit card. Source and event is mostly only important for Vast Action for a database later. Cutco, when you're in Vector Connect, they will not care so much about the source or event unless it's a fair and show order. That's actually a completely different order form. So for the most part, source and event is for Vast Action. It's for Lindsay's database later to know which events she got the most orders from and which events she's going to do again. Notes, I will usually put the most important things in here, like whether the order is a rush or not. I might also put something like this person is a new agent, so this is the biggest order they could make, or something like this person is a mega agent. That tells me that they maybe were just testing the program out, but they could get a bigger order later. If it is their second, third, or fourth, or anything other than their first order, I will check the reorder box. Cutco always wants to know that. I will put a number here over in this other box as to what reorder it is. So if it's the second time they ordered, there will be a 2 in there. Third time they ordered, it's a 3 in there. Self-explanatory. Our auto ship program is basically a subscription. They order, they split their payments over 5 months, and in 6 months we put in another order for them. If it is auto ship, it has to be entered that way in the system from the beginning. So it's very important to note whether that box is checked or not. You'll want to put that into Vector Connect so it gets entered the right way. We'll go over quantities, items, like how to tell what they ordered here. And the client info is pretty self-explanatory. The client name and email address. Something important to note is that for the realtor orders, we do not put their email in Vector Connect. So I put it in the order form because we need to know their order form, but we need to know their email, but we don't give it to Cutco. A couple of reasons. One is the receipt they send is confusing, so we like to send our own. Number 2 is that has to do with the next 2 lines. So sometimes I'll give you a real example. There's a guy named Nick Barrero who has a team, and he makes the order and then he gives every other part of the order and the follow-up to his assistant, Krista. Cutco does not like it if the person whose name is on the credit card does not match the person who they're supposed to email the receipt to. So that happens a lot with realtors, so that's another reason why we leave. We just don't give Cutco any email address at all, and then they can't say, hey, this is Nick with the credit card and Krista on the email address, what's going on. But Nick wants us to do that. He wants to place the order himself, but then have Krista handle all the after stuff. Chris Summers does the same thing. He wants his assistant to get the receipt, file it away, handle the proofs, etc. So I'll have the assistant name and email address. I will squeeze their cell phone number under here if we need it. This information goes back to the agent, so it's their cell phone number, their billing address. We've been having a lot of trouble lately with billing addresses not matching credit card numbers. That's one of the things I want you to be very proactive about, because if the credit card's not going through, it's not a real order, and we need to go chase that down and fix it. Sometimes it's just a matter of Googling the address and seeing if it can be written any other way, or seeing if we accidentally put street instead of road, or we got the zip code wrong, or something silly like that. Other times it's changing their billing address and their shipping address. Maybe they gave me their residence, but their card actually bills to their office. It can be simple. And then, of course, we can reach out to the client and say, hey, the billing address is not matching. Help me out here. And they can usually do that. Expiration date and CSV. Only the non-Cutco orders actually need the CSV, but I'll write it almost all the time so that just in case someone who orders Cutco calls back and says they want to add bottles, we've already got the information. This part of the order form is for me. It basically tells me about future sales. Cutco doesn't care if they're an owner, they only care if they ordered before, which is like ordered from me before. That sounds like it would be the same thing, but they could have got Cutco from somebody else and now they're ordering realtor gifts. So I just tell myself that they have some Cutco at home or they don't. If it says one piece, it means they ordered their realtor gifts and I gave them a free piece. I like to know that I'm the one who started their set. They have one piece and it's the one that's on this order form. Then I check whether they want to add to their set, they need a sharpen of their set, and if they mention specific items that they want. So all of this is for future sales and that kind of information. Over here you have whether they pay in full 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, or our 10-month program or our auto ship program. If it's auto ship, I actually check both of these. They're splitting. Auto ship is a series of 10-month orders. We'll cover that a little bit more thoroughly later. Real quick note here. Once we write down all the stuff that they want, you're going to put that into Vector Connect and you're going to get a total. What I have listed as line 1 here on the order form is a little different than what Vector Connect calls line 1. I'll show you what I mean. Here's an order that we're rolling, and line 1 is just the product price. They didn't add shipping and the admin fee yet. On the order form, I call line 1 what Vector Connect calls line 4. So it's everything that, it's the first line that we use before we add tax on, right? So line 1 on the order form is the last line before we need to add tax. On Vector Connect, they call that line 4. Sorry for that, confusing bit, but basically when we tell the customer the pricing, we include all this so that they don't have to do a whole bunch of extra math. So on the order form, this is line 1, and the next thing is tax. On Vector Connect, they'll break it down and show you shipping and the admin fee. You need to keep that in mind. I will usually tell you if the tax is 6%, which is Pennsylvania, 0, which is Delaware, 8%, which is Philly, and I'll say 7% if it's Jersey. It's actually 6.8%, but sometimes I'll just round it up. And then there's the total, and then the deposit. The deposit is determined by what we marked over here. So if the total is $1,000 and they did a 5-month payment plan, the deposit is going to be $200. 1,000 divided by 5, 200. If the total is $1,000 and they did a 2-month payment plan, the deposit is going to be $500. 1,000 divided by 2, 500. So if you're ever unsure about the deposit, check, and I will usually write all these out, or at least this, this, and this. If they pay in full, I just put PIF. Special instructions. Usually here I will summarize what we wrote up here. Just because it's going to get a little confusing and very detailed, I will be very detail oriented in this part. Sometimes it helps just to have a summary written out in like a sentence form of what they ordered. I will also put any special instructions here like rushes. You're going to want to look for that up here as well. I'll repeat it down here. So this, you want to pay definite attention here. Make sure that your understanding of this matches this. And if there's any special notes, things to take note of, especially deadlines. That's very important. Referrals and other notes is usually a little bit more notes from me. So sometimes I'll say, oh, this agent could introduce me to the manager, or her sister is an agent over in this other office. So usually what's in this box won't be for you, but you should read it anyway and check. because if this box is full, I will overflow to this box. If I put the word Lindsay there, that's an indication that that note is just for me. If it doesn't have the word Lindsay, it might be for you, so at least read it and make sure. An auto ship candidate is different than an actual auto ship. Auto ship is where they said, yes, I want the subscription plan. Auto ship candidate is where they said they might consider that in the future, but they're not now. I'm marking this because auto ship is our best program. It's our premium program. We want everybody that it makes sense for signed up on it. And so if they told me they might consider it in the future, I'm going to check. If they said no, I'm going to say no, and usually I'll say the reason why. We don't want to be hassling people to upgrade to the auto ship program if they already expressed that they don't want it. But if they are interested, we want to make sure we keep presenting that to them, and that's the notes. Again, read this, make sure there's nothing in here for you. Everything else here is related to the engraving instructions. So they either get a company logo, if they put a logo on it, they either get a company logo, a realtor logo, which is just an R in a box, or they get a custom logo, which costs them $50. I will check this to make sure that it's clear what type of logo we're talking about here. If I'm not charging them for the $50, I'll usually cross that out. You will see the $50 listed up here for a custom logo too. If you see this checked and it's not listed up here, it might be something you want me to ask about. Another thing that this is good for is this is a time on the order form where I remind them that if they're getting a custom logo, they need to email you guys, the assistants, the logo, because you can't do the engraving instructions without having some logo for them. If you see this custom box marked, be ready to reach out to the agent and ask for their logo because they probably didn't send it yet. Under here we say whether or not they have a tagline. So above or below the other engraving, sometimes they'll put things like, thanks for spreading my name around, and they'll put that on the spreader. It's cute, it's funny. Your cutting edge realtor, put that on knife is funny. So I'll check if they have a tagline. And then here I'll write out exactly which logo it is that we're talking about. I'll spell out their name, their phone number, their tagline or website if they're using it. This is for like being very clear on how to spell everything. This blank space is for me drawing it out. So for instance, this thanks for spreading my name around, they'll often like arch that over the top of the spreader and they'll make it in a curved line. Can't show that on here. So this is where I tell you how to spell everything, and this is where I draw everything out. If this is super simple, I won't repeat it over here because that's just redundant. But if I'm worried that you might not be able to read something or it might not be clear, I'll repeat it over here. This is them understanding that you can't return engraved items, that there's a 3 to 4 week turnaround, that any changes they make or non-responsiveness that they have might delay the order. And they don't always actually sign down here, but this is still, they saw this and they should understand this. A lot of times I'll get their business card and I'll staple it on here. You might have to enlarge, zoom in a little bit to see what's the information that's on here, but this is where you can double check. If you can't read their cell phone number or the way to spell their name, it should be on their business card. So I would make it a habit to double check the information here, like cell phone number and spelling of the name, because this is definitely right. Usually people don't hand out business cards that have a mistake on them, so this one is reliable in case you can't read somebody's handwriting. Another thing that's going to happen here is this is almost always going to display their shipping address because it's going to be their office. We highly encourage everybody to go to the office. It's safer, it's secure, there's someone to sign for it. You do often have people get their stuff stolen off their porch, so we try to discourage sending to their billing address. You can see there's a $5 charge. That's for 2 reasons. One is because we get charged more to send it to a residential address than to an office. Another one is just a deterrent. Hey, I'm going to make you pay more to ship it to your house because I don't want you to ship it to your house. I don't want you to ship it to your house because it too often gets stolen or lost, and then we have to talk about replacing it. Super expensive to replace stolen Cutco knives. You don't want to do that. You don't want us to have to do that. So if this isn't marked, you can assume that we're sending it to their shipping to their office address. I will almost never let them ship to their billing address, and if I do, I will mark it very clearly. If a client asks about that, you are to say, hey, our policy is to ship to offices because it's safer and secure, and you can get notified when it's there. If they push back and they want it on the billing, we can do it, but you need to mention to them all the reasons why it's not and that it's actually a $5 charge. Okay, so that's the basics of the order form. Again, what kind of order it is, your totals, which will match up eventually into what's in Vector Connect. Your shipping information is here. Everything that you need is there. Be sure to read the entire order form. If I took the time to write something on here, is probably important, and especially remember to look at rush dates, which would be here or here, because rush dates you need to be aware of those the whole way through the order process. I don't just put a rush date or a due date on something for kicks and giggles. Like, that is something that we need to control and make sure the order gets to them by that time. One more note about this field called notes. If they make a non-Cutco order, I process their credit card on Square. So little merchant services where I can run their credit card. It then gives me a Square number. And so if it's one of the non-Cutco items here in the middle, it should have an SQ and then a code there. That proves to you that I charged their credit card. If that is not there, there's two things. I may have forgotten to write it down, and I may have forgotten to actually charge their card. Please notify me if this is not filled in with a Square number, because that could mean that we didn't charge their card yet. I don't want to go and order from the third-party site before I have gotten the money from the realtor. So that could put us in a situation where I bought their stuff on my credit card, but they didn't pay me yet. So again, please notify me if the Square number, if it's a non-Cutco order and the Square number is not filled out. If it's a Cutco order, this one or this one, there will be no Square number. So the majority of your orders, you won't have to deal with that. But if it's a non-Cutco order, there should be a Square number in here. If not, let me know. All right, that's the order form over and out. We're going to move on to a practice order form next. See you soon.